A group of Syrian American college students who had been watching the war unfold in Syria found each other through Facebook and planned a trip to their parents' homeland. They were eager to play any role in supporting the 2-year-old revolution against Syrian President Bashar al-Assad's government. Now, they organized the trip over Skype, raising $15,000 and packing extra suitcases with medical supplies, clothing, and blankets. They spent 2 weeks in Turkey and Syria, meeting with many of the injured, teaching English to refugee children, and meeting with local leaders. Now that they're back, they're planning yet another trip and joining forces with filmmakers and activists with an expanded mission to open a media center in Aleppo. Joining us is Matthew Van Dyke, a filmmaker and activist, Noor Kelzi, a journalist joining us from Aleppo, and Laith Al-Midani, one of the Syrian American students who traveled to Syria. Laith, tell us why you decided to go to Syria with the group.
The reason why we went as a group instead of going as individuals, because we work as a collective effort, and once we work together and we work on the ground, we see firsthand of the problems, and we find the solutions that are the best fit.
So, Laith, I know your parents weren't a fan of the idea when you first brought it up to them, understandably perhaps, but how did you convince them that it was the right thing to do for you?
Yeah, at first they were all against my whole idea, because they told me in essence, I won't solve anything and I won't do anything to help the people. But I went back and I told them that it's not about how much I raise, or it's not about how many people I help. It's about the quality of help I'm going to give. So if I help 1 or 2 or 100 people and give them the real hope, it's the ultimate effect. But the reason why my father at the end, he let me go, I told him it's either I go to Syria or I go to Miami during my winter break. So once he heard it's either Miami, I go and party, or I go and help people in Syria, like he knew I had good intentions, and it's not about me or anyone else. It's about the Syrian people that are suffering.
So, Noor, when you hear Laith talk about the reasons why he came, just to show solidarity, at the very least, and to bring some supplies, knowing that the supplies aren't going to solve the problem, is this important for people like you, for Syrians on the ground, whether journalists or members of the opposition? Do you think it's an important message? How valuable is it?
Yeah, I think so. Everyone participated in a way that they can do, no matter how small or big. It matters. People care about Syria, and having others to know that means that they need to realize what's going on here is so important. So it doesn't matter, like, if it's a small or big thing that you're doing, you care and you know what's going on and you want to do something about it. You do something that you believe in, and that's the true essence of this.
So, Laith, before we brought in the discussion into what's happening and what you hope to accomplish in the future, I want to ask you, you went there with your group to show solidarity. Now, the group came back and you stayed longer. You ended up also, as the Washington Post reported, shooting at a government sniper and getting caught up in the fight. How did that happen, and what do you make of that?
Yeah, the whole experience of going into Aleppo in the city was a very surreal moment, because we were going through the city, we're living in the market, we see one neighborhood, everyone's living, there's markets open. But the street over was the front lines, and I was going through street to street, we're going through buildings, and we heard the sniper fire. When I heard the sniper fire, at first I did flinch, I was nervous, but then I was like I was really upset, like, how is this person, like, he's shooting at us? Like, that whole concept is still hard for me to understand, even though I've seen it on YouTube hundreds of times. Like, for me to be like a victim of being shot at by a sniper, like, I had to take it in my hands to do what I think is the only way to take him out. Because if I hold a sign saying please don't shoot, he's not going to stop. So the only way to take him out is to hold the gun and to shoot him. Because unless he's taken out, he's not going to stop. Because these people, they don't understand by dialogue or peaceful ways, because it's a barbaric regime, and their way of method is by killing people. So the only way they will get the lesson if they're all eliminated, because there's no reason for them to be shooting at anyone.
Well, Laith, I certainly understand that, and I'm sure you've heard that the United Nations is recently on Monday, the Human Rights Commission and Council, saying that there's evidence in the past 6 months of war crimes on the regime's hands and on their part, but as well as the rebels and the opposition. And I know, Matthew, that you can perhaps relate to this notion of going with the intention of perhaps just being there, but you certainly traveled to Libya as a journalist, at least that's how it's been reported, and then you became a freedom fighter, a journalist turned freedom fighter turned documentarian. You were eventually detained for 6 months in prison in Libya, in Tripoli, before returning back to Baltimore. So from Libya, how did you end up in Syria, and why did you go to Syria?
Well, to be clear, I did not travel to Libya as a journalist. I went with the intention of fighting. It's been wrongly reported. But after we succeeded in Libya, and I saw the effects of our success, I realized that we had to export the revolution to the next country. And I believe strongly in the cause, so I went to Syria next.
Why do you believe so strongly in the cause? And what is the cause?
I spent many years in North Africa, the Middle East. I saw how these regimes treat people. I saw the effect on society. And it needs to stop. This is the 21st century. And we have people living under medieval forms of government.
So Matthew, some accuse you of being a misguided thrill seeker. I'm sure you're familiar with this. What do you say to that?
I don't get a thrill from war. It's a terrible thing. It's something that I do with some degree of reservation. It's not something that I rush into. I went through years of thrill seeking on motorcycles and so on. And that's how I would still get my thrills. Combat's not something that excites me. I'm not into war games, or I don't take pleasure in it. Shooting at somebody's a terrible responsibility, but somebody has to do it.
I want to play a clip before we go any further. You say you were asked to fight on behalf of the Free Syrian Army when you were there, but you promised that you were only there to film until, quote, next time, as you've put it. I want to ask you about that, but first let's take a look at this footage from the documentary you shot with Noor in it, which is called Not Anymore, A Story of Revolution.
Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar! Allahu Akbar!
You saw a man die 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Do you worry that could happen to you?
Noor, are you worried that could happen to you?
Well, that can happen at any moment, any time, any place. I mean, 2 days ago, I just survived a jet's airstrike. I was sleeping at home in my bed when I just, all the windows and the doors were open and shrapnels flew all over the place. I was lucky that I survived. Yeah, I worry that this might happen, but I just don't care because it might happen at any time, any place. This is a war zone. And the regime is vicious, and they don't care whether it's civilians who are safe sitting at their houses, eating and drinking, or whether you are a fighter at the front line or a photographer on the front line.
So, Noor, what do you make of these allegations by the United Nations saying they have documented evidence that there are war crimes and violations of human rights on the hands of the rebels and opposition as well?
Well, basically, it's the regime's fault. They started this. I think there are a few mistakes, but they're nothing compared to what the regime is doing. And I mean, that's supposed to make somebody move or do something about it instead of just accusing the opposition.
So what do you think of this notion of foreign fighters being there? How important is it that people like Matthew, if in fact on his next trip does decide to fight, as he said was his reason to going to Libya, how important is it? It seems as though when we hear about foreign fighters fighting there, that they're often cited as adding to the chaos, the violence, the destruction, and so forth.
Well, I believe that it's like a human cause, just humanity. It's something that you feel. If you believe it, if you feel it, and you do this as a human being, and you know that you can offer something and do actually make a change and help, then yes, I support these kind of things.
And Matthew, is the purpose of your new trip, as Noor is planning to set up this Free Syrian Free Syrian Media Center, rather, are you traveling there as someone to help her set that up? Are you traveling there as a freedom fighter? What are your aims in your next trip to Syria that you're trying to raise money for?
The focus of my work now is helping Noor. I don't plan on fighting anytime in the near future. The time's not right for that yet.
And help Noor do what exactly? What's the aim there?
Help her establish a media center, advise her on a few things, help her with activists and activism, help her with filmmaking, with the activists, various activities.
And Noor, is there a reason in particular? I mean, it seems like there's been a lack of media throughout this revolution and throughout the coverage, but why are you starting this media center in particular in Aleppo?
Well, I just wanted to help foreigner journalists and show them around to see what's really going on, to make it as safe and as easy as possible for them. That's first. And I've been doing this for a while. I mean, every single photographer or someone that I meet, I just get experience from. So it would be nice to have, learn from others by being around them, and have other activists also learn from these journalists.
So, go on.
Like Ahmed, like the whole purpose of me going in my past and the future was to all do what pretty much Matthew is doing, is to empower the activists on the ground. Because for us from abroad, our perspective isn't really that important. It's all about empowering them and have their voice come out to the world. Like the whole purpose of us helping with the media center is to bring out a clearer message, because we want to overall support for the Free Syrian Army. We want support of the revolution, because with all the manipulation that's been happening, very, very few people understand what's really happening in Syria. They think it's an even battle when it's not an even battle. They think it's a civil war when it's really a genocide. So once people understand how horrible the conditions are in Syria, people will help Syria. People will have some support for Syria. But up until now, the message is not clear, and the people are afraid of Syria and are afraid of the future. But people have to understand the present is a lot scarier than that might even happen in the future. And the conditions on the ground, it's indescribable.
So, Noor, when we talk about the conditions on the ground, are they worsening as we see from reports? I mean, we have a comment from Justice Holmes saying, I would love to see peace and safety for the people of Syria. Unfortunately, the U.S. can't give that to them. The Arab world must stand up to Assad. American involvement will cause more pain and will ultimately fail and cause more anti-American feelings or sentiment. Do you agree, Noor?
Well, basically, I do not agree. Like, so many Syrians have met Matthew on the ground here, and they really say, oh, we love America and thank you for being here, and just having others who just feel your pain and understands what you're going through. It doesn't add up to the problem. On the contrary, it just brings people together.
And the one thing about being an American, when I was first there in Damascus in 2011, people did not trust me until I showed them my U.S. passport, that I'm not a Syrian, that I'm from America, that I'm coming from here to be your voice. So before, they wouldn't even tell me their name or their history, but after I told them who I was in my mission and that I'm from America, they told me their whole life story, their history, and everything.
Matthew,
so they all love America.
I mean, perhaps that's a generalization to say they all love America, but Matthew, you've more specifically made the claim that, there's a lot of people in Syria who feel the U.S. has abandoned them. And when you compare it to perhaps your experience in Libya, the fact that NATO led the intervention there and America was, of course, much more involved. Is that your aim? To try and make Americans care more, to make the government act more? Do you support intervention?
Yeah, I support intervention. I support a NATO-style air campaign in Syria. It's not going to happen. They're not getting nearly the weapons or ammunition that they need. Basically, the Syrian American and Syrian European community is going to have to donate money, and Syrians are going to have to do this themselves. But I support any effort to bring this war to an end as quickly as possible, and it's in America's interest to do so.
You don't think that intervention, if America was to intervene in yet another Middle Eastern country, it could have the argument that people make that it could have a destabilizing effect on the region, and that it might not actually make things better, but rather make things worse, as we saw in Iraq, for example, even though the circumstances were different?
The circumstances were radically different. I mean, Syria is already destabilized. the best thing to do now is to bring the war to an end and try to put it back together. The longer it goes on, the worse it'll get. The more division will be in the country. The more, extremist foreign fighters will flood into the country. The more proliferation of weapons into neighboring countries. The problem's only going to get worse the longer it goes on. I mean, it's becoming quite clear.
I want to play another clip from some of the footage that you shot, Matthew. This also features Noor once again. Let's play that clip, and then I'd like to ask you a question.
Maybe after the Americans see that, they found there is a cat here in Syria. I hope they will help the cats. Maybe we'll see it. Oh, there is a cat in Syria. So let's go help Syria. Don't care about the woman. Just care about the cat. At least the cat, it's animal. It needs some support.
Noor, he said, don't care about the woman, just care about the cat. Of course, you laughed. It is a comical scene to a certain extent, but yeah, what's the message sarcastic
there? It's funny though, like we've been talking about this before. People in America care for cats and dogs probably, and it's funny what's going on here is much more worse than having a cat stuck on top of a tree and everybody's trying to rescue that cat. And while here we've got people, kids, getting killed while they're asleep because the regime is shelling them, and this is horrifying. And people in America are sleeping, and not just in America, everywhere else. They might not know about this. They might not know where is Syria on the map. It's funny. So yes, people might know about cats and dogs and what are the problems that they might be facing in America, but they're clueless about what's going on in Syria.
So Noor, is that the aim then, to set up this media center? What are your three kind of objectives? Why are you doing this?
Yeah, I want this to help foreign journalists first, to show the truth. Actually, the regime chose this. I chose to be involved in this because the regime made a total blackout and did not allow press to cover what's going on in Syria. We need to show the truth. We need to show what's going on. If we did not do this, then we'll never know. Nobody's going to know what's going on. I might not know what's happening in the other neighborhoods or in the next block. So yes, we need this. That's one of the reasons, to show what's going on. And Aleppo, first of all, has a lot to say because we're in the middle of war right now. So of course we need to have foreigners and to help activists also to learn. At some point, we need activists on the ground to be working and to show what's going on. We cannot just depend on journalists. These are the reasons that I'm doing so.
Are you a journalist or an activist, or does it matter, the distinction?
Right now, I consider myself a photographer, a journalist, because I'm here to show the truth, to show what's really going on. And if I had a chance to cross over to the regime's areas and see what it is to be around with soldiers, I would have done that, but I know that they wouldn't allow that. They've been fighting this since the beginning, and they want to control the whole thing by just showing what they want to show, not showing what's really going on.
Well, part of that control, as you're describing it, is presumably to try and silence voices like yours and objectives like yours with this media center that you're trying to set up. Are you concerned at all that speaking out as you are and reporting the truth as you claim immediately endangers you? I mean, does your family, want you to continue doing the work you do?
Well, first of all, I'm happy that I'm getting all the support that I need from my family. I'm not worried about this. They understand what I'm doing, and they're fully supportive of this. Yes, what I'm doing and me actually talking about this endangers me, but it doesn't matter. Everyone's in danger right now, and somebody needs to do something. And if this is the only way that I can help, then I'm going to do it.
And I want to ask you about your Kickstarter. I know you're trying to draw as much attention around what you're doing and your work in Syria. Your Kickstarter project, which was promoting your documentary, drew 60 backers and raised a lot of money. I mean, a considerable amount, $50,000, before being suspended by the site. Any idea why it was suspended?
They never gave an official reason, so I'm not exactly sure.
And I mean, has that at all affected your work? How are you raising money, and how do you and Noor plan to actually build the media center?
Well, People had pledged $15,000 through Kickstarter. I received none of the money, so I put over $13,000 of my own money, pretty much everything I have, into this film.
What is the aim? I mean, if it's everything you have, clearly the passion is there, but what do you think it'll achieve, or what do you hope it'll achieve? It'll go viral, for example?
I'm providing the film to NGOs and Syrian American groups that are trying to raise money for Syria. So at the event, they can show the film, and hopefully people open their pockets more. I'm certain it'll result in a lot more money going to the cause.
So, Noor, we've discussed the importance of spreading awareness, but recently we've seen reports from the ground in Syria, the UN confirming this, that typhoid, for example, hepatitis A, have broken out, waterborne diseases and other epidemics are spreading in areas like Aleppo and Idlib. What can you tell us about what's happening on the ground in Aleppo and where the situation stands today?
Well, a lot is going on. People are suffering in so many aspects in their lives, and they're trying to cope. They try to survive in so many ways. We need every kind of help that we can get, whether medical or anything else. It's disastrous. The situation here is really bad, and I think it will go worse if it continues like this.
We've heard that the reason for these illnesses is that people don't have necessarily access to water. They're drinking water from the Euphrates River. Are things getting worse on the day-to-day in terms of safety and security? What can you tell us about the situation in Aleppo?
Well, I've been here for quite a long time. We don't have electricity right now. We're having electricity because of the generators. So you don't have water. You don't have electricity. That happens for months, not only one or a week. People had to find different ways to survive. I told you they're coping with the crisis that they're facing every day. There's a water crisis, electricity, and food crisis sometimes, everything. It's really going worse. If it stays like this, it's going to get worse. And I'm really worried about how people are going to survive this.
So when you hear comments like this, and I'll open this up to anybody, Robert_999 3 minutes ago saying, Islam has to learn to deal with its own problems, religious wars, lifelong dictatorships, Egypt, Libya, Syria, this is something they must correct. This fits into the unfortunate narrative that every conflict is sectarian in the region. But what do you react what's your reaction, Noor or Laith, or even Matthew?
Well, I'll start off. This whole aspect, I get this question a lot of times, and I said if it wasn't for Islam, you would see a lot more sectarian killings and revenge killings from the opposition. Because of Islam, we are not like this. We don't harm people that haven't harmed us. We don't kill in a sectarian way. We kill those that have harmed us, and that's it. And all the ones that we have seen, all the Islamic influence that I've came across with in Syria and Aleppo, they all have told me that there's not a sectarian whatsoever. And for the most part, it's not even a different sect that's causing most of the harm. It's our own sect. It's the Sunnis and the Muslim that are killing the other Muslims. So it's not about being Alawite or Sunni or Christian or a Jew. That it's the only sectarian came from the regime, and the sectarian part is the regime against anyone that wants freedom. Anyone that wants freedom is targeted.
Noor, you agree?
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I agree.
All right. Well, Matthew, Noor, Lay, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. For those of you watching, as you know, the conversation here at HuffPost Live always continues, so be sure to stay tuned and keep the comments coming. Thanks for watching.